Welcome back. I'm playing Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormground. Today what I'm going to do is give some tips and tricks for the game, how I'd recommend kitting out your guys, because a lot of people were having difficulty with this game, and it's actually gives it some bad reviews online because people aren't clear how to play the game, how to equip it, because it's kind of an unusual design with it expecting you to die and doing the same thing over and over again until you get better equipment and kind of grinding your way through. If you use things like the cheat engine, the game is much better, so I strongly recommend that you use the cheat engine to speed up the battle animations, because it otherwise can be very tedious. So it can turn a battle from going from 10 to 12 minutes down to 3 to 7, depending on how early in the campaign it is. So it just makes it much easier and much more tolerable to keep going through the same levels over and over again. The other thing I'd recommend for this game is kind of get some piece of paper and write down which maps you're doing, because depending on which pathways you're going, you'll see unique locations, which will also give you unique mini bosses to fight. That'll give you access to additional lore articles, and it also gives you access to unique equipment and summoning and miracles and other abilities that you'll get access to that you won't have access to any other way through the playthrough. So I'd strongly recommend that as you're going through beating the campaign on the different difficulties, just writing down which places you've been to, because at certain places there's branch points and it's real easy to forget which campaigns you've done what for. So if I were to go back and do this again, that would be something I would strongly recommend. So I'll go through next here to just go through each one of these 3 campaigns here, go through the units, through the heroes, and kind of give you my recommendations on equipment and skills for them. If you guys have other recommendations, disagree, let me know, comment below so then other people can see, because I think a lot of people are turned off of this game just because it gets brutally hard early on, then you kind of fly through, and then late game it gets quite challenging again depending on which hero you're using. Definitely it's very easy generally with the tanks, and if you're trying to use the mages it's much more difficult. So we'll move on to the different units here for the Stormcast Eternals, Nighthaunt, and Megakin, and show you what each one of them include, and I'll also show you how to change out your heroes, because as you can see these are not the standard heroes for the campaigns here if you're playing through these yourself. And then you have the different difficulty settings, so you go through it easy, which unlocks normal, and then you have hard, and you do that for each one of the campaigns. So hopefully this will be helpful for you guys. Easy. Pretty much the big thing there is it costs 1 to resurrect, and you get to select 3 forces here to come with you. This is your main character that you get. She's one of the best ones that you can possibly select here, because she's an excellent tank, and then she can get shit tons of health. So by getting resilient defense, every time she's charged she gets health, and that stacks. And you just keep getting it. You've got resilience, so each time she kills somebody she gets some health, and it can't be expelled. And then she gets hatred, and each time you kill a unit, which is very easy to do with her, she ends up getting additional damage, and then you can throw on additional skills to increase her damage further and increase her armor. And so when you start getting these elite tier equipment on her, like this one here, that's 3 armor, so she's already at 5. And then you could give her the hammers, which are great. Get her the sword here, that would also do quite a bit, and now she does up to 5 damage. Get her this additional armor, now she's up to 7 armor. You could do it 1 more armor and get her up to 8, or you could just you could get her more health, so 2 more health, that'd be 14, so then she'd become a powerhouse. But I tend to just want to give her increased damage, so something like this would be an excellent way to kit her out. And then there's different options on what she looks like here with the different equipment that you get as you're playing through the campaign. Actually, kind of like that one the best. But, so that's her. It's not really... Yeah, okay, so Ascension difficulty mainly played with the original faction hero. So on the easiest difficulty, you can use that. Okay. Because it's not clear to me, or wasn't clear to me at the time of the game, that there was multiple heroes. Because I'd get a card as I'd go through the playthrough to see this other character, and I thought it was glitching out. What actually happens is you have to be on the harder difficulties, you right-click on the portrait, and that'll allow you to exchange for a new character. You know, you've got these castigators, which are effectively archers. Once you get them some increased damage like this, that significantly improves. I tend to think the easiest ways to build them out is to give them some additional damage, and then give them force multiplier, which will allow you to summon 2 of them instead of 1. That's how this works. You can actually stack these, so potentially you could do 3 and then you could stack a whole bunch of these guys. I've not found that to be beneficial with these more elite tier units. The other thing that I like is called Skirmisher, and what that is it allows them to move and shoot, because otherwise when you move these guys and then shoot, or if you move them, then you have to use your indirect fire ability, which takes a turn to channel, and usually they'll move around you. But if you do something like this, now they can move and shoot. They have additional damage, so that makes it real easy. The other units are these guys here, these healers, and they're amazing. You know, get them some sort of thing to get them dispel ability, and that's pretty helpful. And you can get some kind of thing. I never really got a great maul because I didn't quite know what they were until late in the game, but effectively what it does is if you can stand in line, you can push guys into other units as long as you're in a line, do additional damage, and you can set the tile ablaze, so then you can get an additional damage on there. Alternatively, you can equip them with a sword to get additional bonuses. So, you know, there's ones that give you this strike here. If you want to throw them in there, you know, this will give you +2 damage permanently. So then this will be doing 6 damage. Plus you put on this elite assistance, and then you can summon 2 of them. So then you have healing. You've got these damage dealers running around. I tend to make them a little bit cheaper. If you give them this furious assistance, then their bonus stays with it. Unfortunately, you're seeing that the game glitches a little bit. So now it's kind of bringing it back, but this will make it so you have a permanent increased damage, which is pretty great. I usually... God damn it. This thing is just such a pain in the ass when it glitches out like this. Let's see if I can bring it into... No. Alright. If I come out and come back in, will it do it, or is it going to make me close all the way out? Yeah, you're going to make me close all the way out, aren't you, you bastard? Alright, give me a second. As you can see, this game is buggy.
The Stormcast.
Alright, so I do something like that, and then... Ah, you fucker. Alright, well there's an easier way to do this. Let's just exchange him out for a different character. Do I have a different level 4? Here we go. So, you know, you can do that for the lower tier. You can do the Furious to get your damage. You get them the Elite, so you can summon 2 of them. And... if you were turning him into a damage dealer, then the Weapon Mastery is a good option for him. If you're using a lot of Dispels, then you can get some additional healing, which could be quite beneficial. What I would generally recommend is just giving them some armor, because they're kind of squishy, and if you're being thrown into attacks, that would be helpful. However, I tend to like to use them as healers, so then this rapid recharge works great, because it decreases the cooldown of your attacks. So something like that would be how I would build out this Knight Incanter. Next characters would be the Liberator. Alright, so this is how I would kit out the Liberators, is I would have one have the Resurrector, so he could end up healing. because what it does is it rends armor, and then each time you use it, it heals the unit that's using this, so that it heals this unit and the guys around it for 2. And then the shield wall gives an additional armor to everybody else that's around him. And I would give him the Eternal Protector, which, so anybody that gets protected from this guy gets attacked, he gets additional 1 damage. And then this allows him to automatically protect an adjacent ally. So it just auto uses it. Now there's also another ability in here called the Distant Protector or something like that, and so that actually increases the distance by +1 for protect. However, I tend to keep these guys close enough together that I never had to use that ability, because I always like to have force multipliers so I can get additional liberators on the field. So if you're going to run dual purpose guys here, I would do something like this, where, you know, I'd turn 1 to be, you know, to have this armored Warhammer on, because you know, because you can see he's already got 5 armor, so these guys can take a lot of hits. Alternatively, if you wanted to use the come on, where is it? The Sundering Hammer? No, not the Sundering Hammer. I know it's in here somewhere. This one, the Ruin Sword, because it gives an aura that gives everybody else +1 damage, so that would boost everybody else up. I like this one because it also has the aura where it heals, or it gives armor to everybody that's around there, so you just always look to make sure you see that. It has Fortify, and this one also gives you shock immunity, and it lets you store up charged lightnings, so you can get up to 3. And it'll allow you, once they attack you, to deal damage and ignores. So with these guys, I like to have Brotherhood, because there's going to be 4 of them, and so you're getting +1 health on all these guys. I get them the Force Multiplier, and then the Improved Guard to get additional armor. So that's how I would kit out the Liberators if I was running like a dual stack of them. Next unit for these guys is the Prosecutor. I personally do not like these guys. I did not get great equipment for them, so I never got to use them to their greatest potential. However, I hate playing against them because the AI will end up getting stacks of them, and they have something called Vengeance Mark, so when you kill a unit, they'll all throw their spears at you, and they have armor penetration. So these guys can easily kill you if you're in range, and their range is huge, so they're an absolute nightmare if you're having a bunch of units die. But since I rarely have units die when I was going through the campaign, once I had guys kitted out, it just wasn't worth it. So what I would typically do is, because I didn't have great weapons, is I'd give them something like the spear here, and then they can attack in melee, or every 5 turns or whatever it would be, you could end up throwing the spear for damage, and then when it happens, it creates a lightning hazard, and it ends up causing additional damage. Now this one's a higher unit, higher tier, so it does it for 3. Most of them only last for 1. You can do the shield wall with these guys, or you could end up getting ones where they have to fortify to help get additional healing going, because I found these guys frequently got themselves killed. If you put yourself into a bad positioning, then you could fortify heal, and then if they get attacked, you'll counter for +3. So the Frenzy Shield definitely was one that was a great help. This one here gives you +2 armor, so that was also one that I really liked. Shield of Cleansing, once you get to Nurgle, they start putting a bunch of stuff on you. That will help you to dispel a bunch of stuff. So, you know, there's lots of different options here for the shields once you start getting higher tier. And then when it came to kitting these guys out, I usually ended up doing something like this. So lasting reinforcement. So when these guys warp down, they give temporary bonus armor. So I would always do something like this, so then it would be permanent, because that made it very helpful. I would give them something like Relentless, so that way they could be spawned and attack on the same thing. And then I'd also give them Force Multiplier. That way, when I got them killed, these guys could come down. Alternatively, I don't know if I have them here, but you can give them Blitz, and this will allow them to get 2 attacks 1 turn. So you can attack and then do another attack. that's another option. Finally, these guys also have access to hit and run, which effectively lets you attack and then not get damaged when they get the counter attack. Vengeance was the ability I was referencing. So enemies that kill your allies take bonus damage. So Vengeance prosecutors with Vengeance deal +1 damage per stack of charging units with Vengeance marks. And so that was just a disaster. I don't know if you're able to inescapable Vengeance. Yeah, +1. So this is how the AI builds them, is they get the Vengeance marks and they get inescapable Vengeance, and that gives them +1 cast range, and allows them to just do all this stuff, and they just blow apart your units, so it gets really freaking annoying. If you like to teleport and fly around the map, then the Swiftwing's good because it allows you to fly and then get attacks. But again, I really did not like these guys, so I tended not to use them very much. The next unit is the Retributors, and so that other hammer did increase the damage for these guys. It's pretty easy to come across a lot of these hammers to get additional damage going, which was nice. They have this ability when they slam the ground, knocks them back, and it triggers chain lightning. A lot of the time I ended up getting myself damaged with it, so I got very frustrated with using the chain lightning. But it is what it is. I tend not to like these escapable storms because I like to move my guys around because I'm frequently killing everything. So I tend to give them something like this to give them damage. So now their base is already up to 5. I would typically give them Inspired Guard to try to get them more armor so they would survive more. I would give them the Weapon Mastery to increase their damage. Obviously, I'd do the Reinforcement if I can find it. Elite Assistance. I tend not to use Deflect, which would cause them to be able to get a free attack. I just found that that wouldn't be sufficient, so I'd either reduce the cost of summoning them so I could get more of them, or I would tend to just give them the increased health. Something like that, because this would keep them survivable because they get attacked a lot and they do a lot of damage. So with something like this, you can kit them out so that way you'd be able to keep them alive, keep healing. I suppose alternatively you could add another guard on there for 1 additional armor instead of the health. It's up to you, but that would be how I'd kind of kit these guys out. And then there's a couple other units. One is the Hunters. These guys were really cool early on in the game, and then rapidly just got replaced because they weren't as good. The big thing with them is being able to use these bear traps. So especially this highest tier one here. What it effectively does is it locks somebody down for 4 turns. It does damage to them. And so it effectively nullifies the unit if they're coming at you. So I use this a lot early on when enemy heroes would be chasing down my guys and I didn't have good equipment and they'd kill me. So then I'd be able to just snipe them down with the castigators. So definitely really liked the bear traps. Never really used the bombs or anything. Unfortunately, because late in the game, I didn't really use these guys very much. I did stumble across a really good pistol, but I didn't select it, and it gave you +5 damage. So this is how these guys are able to do damage from far. So I would typically give them a weapon, and then I really like these Shocking Axe because what happens is you can attack them and it stuns. So then they don't get counterattacks on you. So I'd give them some sort of axe, some sort of pistol, so then they could end up attacking. I would give them the experienced huntsman if I was not sure I could end up keeping them alive, or if I wasn't sure I could position them appropriately. Usually I kept them close enough to the action where I didn't have to use this ability, but if you're having trouble with that, if you are going to give them a pistol, give them support fire. I did not personally use this because I didn't understand how this ability worked. But after playing the game against the storm callers, what this effectively does is it gives one of your units, if you're standing next to it and they gets attacked, then you'll attack them with your pistol. So definitely a very helpful ability to use. This would allow you to attack with both weapons if you're charging. I didn't really use it though. Alternatively, if you didn't want to use this, if you're like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to get it, that trap range would be a very helpful one as well, because it gives you an additional range on your trap. And then obviously, I'd give them like force multiplier, support fire, and either tireless. Nope, not tireless. Probably trap range would be the one that I would kit them out with the most. Yeah, because I don't plan on getting them killed, I wouldn't use Last Laugh. Yeah. This would be the alternative, trap range instead of the movement. And I tend to actually like doing the movement over the range, because I'd place it down and then run away, because I would use these guys to kind of aggro units to come after them. So, and then the last unit type are these Palladors. Again, I really did not like these guys. I think you could have kitted them out to be better. Probably giving them the hand axe would have made it much better, because I just had a trouble keeping these guys alive. And then I could have given them something like this. So this would have been a much better way of kitting these guys out. I just never really appreciated how to use them appropriately, so I think this would be a much smarter way of doing it, kind of keeping it for the same reasoning for the hunters, because I think these guys would have been a natural person to exchange out with the hunters once you start getting better equipment here, minus the traps. The thing that's really cool about them is they have this ability, so when they die, they effectively get resurrected. So if you were to have that, and then the elite squads, you effectively have significantly buffed them. Then you can give them Blitz if you want to be attacking them, or you could give them the Relentless to let you move after you're getting them summoned, increase their damage, something like that. Alternatively, you could get them +1 armor. But that would have been a much better way of using these guys. So that would be my recommendations for the Stormcaller units. And then if I just go over here, you right click and now you have access to your other hero if on the harder difficulties. And again, this is like the Hunter, this is the Hunter and the Pallador all turned into one. So they have the traps and they have the same equipment. So I would kit them out the same way as those units that we just discussed. But because I didn't know I had these units and I didn't really use the Palladors or Hunters, I never really selected for better weapons. So unfortunately with my playthrough, I really didn't use these guys appropriately, nor did I select units or items or skills to help them. Pretty much if you have the ability to get guard, always get guard. If you see elite reinforcements, always select that. Early on, the basic reinforcements are always good abilities. I have yet to have a playthrough where I'm like, God, I wish I have too many guard abilities. I always find that, man, I wish I could just have more. So that would be my trick for these guys to kit them out. As you go through the higher difficulties, you pretty much lose a slot for starting, so it forces you to pick up additional characters at random as you're playing through the campaign and level them up as you go. You have something called miracles, which are up here. This is what you use to resurrect your guys. On the easy and normal, it's 1 miracle per resurrection per unit. On the hardest difficulty, it goes up to 2. Tribute is like free experience, so you can see here maxed out to be, you know, you can just hit L and then it puts the experience to level them up, and with each level you can get additional skills unlocked. Low tier units like this have max level 3. The medium tier units which would be like your healing mages or the retributors. They have 4, and then your heroes can go up to level 5. So that's how that works. Going on to the Night Haunt here. This is the undead. These guys are probably my favorite faction out of all of them. Well, I really do like the Stormcallers too, but this is definitely probably my second, or if not tied for first. So Pelagast the Pitiless, he's an amazing unit. Early on, these guys feel kind of weak, but if you watch my playthrough, I mean, I was almost able to go all the way through on my first playthrough. So I'm going to just kit out some guys here and show you some examples of how to kit these guys out. Okay, so here are some units here, just going through playing as the undead. Some examples of how to kit these guys out with the equipment that I had is I liked giving him this because it gave him 2 additional armor. It allows you to get the Merciless Strike, so you can attack him without getting countered. And it didn't get reduced damage, so this just let him just run around and get a bunch of kills. Then, if you can get access to this armor-piercing hourglass, definitely want to get these, because what this effectively does is allow you to lifesteal, and it bypasses armor. So this is a +4 health with a very low threshold, and it gives you 1 additional health. So this is a great item. There's weaker versions of it, but pretty much armor-piercing hourglasses with this lifesteal, you want that. Otherwise, you're barely getting it. You'll get maybe 1 health when you're lifestealing, and that's just not enough to keep you alive. Then I typically gave him Weapon Mastery, so you get additional damage. I would give him Life Drain, which is an amazing ability. If I had more, I would definitely do it, but each time he killed somebody, he gets health back. I'd give him the Improved Guard to get additional armor. I did give him additional health, and I gave him an additional guard because these can stack. So with your weaker units, you could give them guard if it's a tank. Otherwise, you could just do a bunch of guard on your weaker characters and build their armor up, because that allows them to just run around and get a bunch of kills. So this would be how I'd recommend kitting out Pelagast with the equipment that I had access to. Then you had these units here, the Bladegeist Revenants. These were very... I liked them a lot. They were hard to keep alive, but these are pretty much glass cannons. They have very low health, but they can run in and just fuck shit up pretty much. So I'd give them something like this, which would be the Armor-Piercing Greatsword. So they ignore armor, they just run in and they do 6 damage. Or you're using this Whirlwind Death, which has a range of effect and just doing a bunch of damage here. Alternatively, there's other Greatswords that if you use the special ability when you're killing them, it increases, it gives you a permanent increase to your attack. So if you can do that real early, then they can get these guys out to be even greater damage. In terms of their skills, I like the Force Multiplier. I liked giving them March, so they had additional movement, and then I give them something like the Weapon Mastery, so they had even more damage. So they were just kind of a fun unit to play around with. The Chain Gas, these guys, which are very interesting for the undead, actually can become huge damage dealers. So I tend to give them some sort of weapon that would give them armor and attack, and then they have access to Harvester. And what that does is for each kill they get a permanent +1 damage. You could stack it up to 3 times, so that means if you had 3 of them, every kill you get +3 damage, and it can just keep going. So that's amazing. And then just the Force Multiplier, which gives you additional summons of them. Alternatively, these are actually units that I kind of liked potentially using, multiple Force Multipliers and just getting a bunch of them, because you know, by the time you get them the harvest and then they get the damage, then they can do a ton of damage to enemy units. These Chain Rasp Hordes, I really like these units. I'd give them something like this, the Night Howler, which allows you to steal armor, and you can then use it for yourself. Alternatively, you can give them a weapon that'll increase their armor. These guys were hard to tell you what kind of skills, because there's so many good skills that you could use. Makes it hard to make a decision. So I like the Undead Blessing. Pretty much it allows you to heal health for the guys here, and that's just always good, being able to keep your guys alive. You could give them Chainbound, which increase the range and decreases the recharge rate of being able to use it again. And what this effectively did is it would permanently, well, not really permanently, while the skill was active for several turns, it would reduce the armor of nearby units, and then I'd give them the multiplier ability as well. Options, if you really like to use a chain bound, there's other abilities that you can use. Let's see if I can find them here. Chainbound root. So now not only is the armor gone, but you could root them in place, and it lasts 3 turns. So that could be great. Additionally, there's where is it? Endless Horde, which gives them a healing aura. Well, not really healing aura, but increases max health for aura. And depending on how many you have it's either applies to Chain Wrath, you get 2, it applies to all allies. And if you have 3, it goes up to an additional 2 stacks away. So, just a fun unit. In terms of the Imprison, I tried to use it a couple times and I just never was able to imprison anybody. So I don't know if it's just you can only use it on low tier units or if it's bugged out. Alternatively, if you have improved guard, you can increase their armor and make these guys tanky. But just kind of an overall fun unit to use. Alright, and moving on to the next 3 characters here. So the Dreadblade Heroes. This would be... I really like these units. They move around, they have great abilities, they can do a ton of damage. They tend to survive much better than the lower tier units. These are effectively damage dealers that instead of having 3 or 4 health, they have up to 6. So I tend to give them, a great sword like this one. If you use this ability, it's going to heal you. Again, these guys, because they can move around so much with their movement of 4, if you give them March, they can go even farther like this. Or you could end up giving them abilities that if they get kills using the special abilities, increase their damage, so then they could just keep going all over the place. Unfortunately, you have to listen to the neighing, which drives you crazy. But I like giving them March like I was insinuating. I give them the Weapon Mastery, the Elite Assistant, so you get 2 of them. And then giving them something like Relentless, so they can move around at the same turn that they get summoned. Or giving them Blitz, so they get double attacks, would be how I'd kit those guys out. These guys, I struggled with them because they basically don't do a lot of damage unless you get really good weapons for them. And they just completely die because their base health is at 3. So I didn't quite understand how to use them for most of the playthrough. But what you effectively want is these are the only units that can use glaives. So if you find a good glaive, you need to select it, or else these guys are going to suck. And then you need to have them mark units for death. Because if you mark them for death, they get additional damage, and these guys have abilities that if you start doing that, it'll increase their damage. So for this one, if you kill it, it increases their maximum health, so it allows you to make them more survivable. If you end up attacking them, these will give you plus health. There's other ones that give you additional power and stuff if you attack. If you don't have these, I tend to just give them increased damage because you need to get that up, and then give them either some armor or health because these guys are very fragile, and then giving them the force multipliers. If you don't have these other abilities, this would actually be a unit that I'd recommend doing multiple force multipliers on because they're just so easy to die. It's hard to level them up before they get killed. And then you can get different axes for them to give them additional benefits for the Curse of Death. The other thing is these guys can lay some traps, but I just tend to not like using them very much. And then you get these guys, the Guardian of Souls. And these are some of the best healing, well, they're not some of, these are the best healing units in the game. And once you start getting these, the playthrough gets dramatically easier. So tend to give them some sort of blade. If you give them the chill blade, then they can do some damage if you move right next to a unit. Hopefully you won't have to get these guys into melee, but they have enough health that they can actually tank a little bit. So they're actually kind of hard to kill. Again, same thing as the hero. You want to give them some sort of hourglass piercing ability so they can heal themselves. Unfortunately, these guys' main claim to fame is their healing aura. but they don't heal themselves with it. So you have to use abilities like this to heal it. Alternatively, giving them healing souls, which allows you to summon a wisp that allows you to heal 2 health. And you can put this directly on the unit you want to heal. So this can help him heal your hero if the hero is getting ahead of himself and getting killed or siphoned down. So this, alternatively, your heroes can also summon wisps. So giving them something like this, or there's another ability. What is it called? Swarm of Souls. This is actually a really good one too, because you summon a bunch of wisps in an area, and then you can use them to summon additional reinforcements, or you can just run your units over and get multiple heals, because each wisp is 1 health. In terms of kitting them out, giving them the elite assistance, obviously, so that way you get to +1 reinforcements, and then the Radiant Souls. It says it doesn't stack, but it actually stacks. I tested it out, so I don't know if that's an error, but it does seem to stack. So I would just put 3 of them on. Okay, and then we move to the next 2 units here. So the Lord Executioner. These guys are a lot of fun. They do decent amount of damage, giving them something like the Lifesteal Axe. Will allow you to do a lot of stuff for any 2-handed weapon. That'll give you +2 damage, because you can see they get up to 6, which is a significant amount of damage for this game. They tend to be kind of expensive, so I usually will use a summon cost reduction on them. I like to give them March to get increased movement, so when they get summoned I can get them right into the action, because I tend to summon them later because of their costs. Obviously the Elite Assistance, so that way you can summon multiple. And then looking through the abilities, I didn't understand how this Restless Gallows worked. So what happens is you're able to summon a Gallow with this unit, and what it does is it randomly will attack a unit for, I think, 2 or 3 damage. And what this does is if they're in range of the Gallow and you charge them, then it'll also automatically give you an additional attack. So this gives you additional things, and you can summon multiple Gallows. So definitely would have summoned this or used this more had I understand that how it worked. I thought originally that how this worked is if it was like a defensive ability. So if somebody attacked the Gallows, they would do 2. But no, it's when charging an enemy in the range of the Gallows, it will attack them automatically. So that would be a great ability that I didn't appreciate how to use. My least favorite characters are the Miremorn Banshees. So you have to decide how you want to use them. They're used as disruptors. What happens is when they die, they explode, and they move guys all over the place. And most of the time I found that would actually explode on my own units, and then we'd all take damage, everybody would be bouncing around. If multiple got taken out, then all of a sudden my own guys would get killed or thrown off the ledge or thrown into obstacles. So I found them to be too much of a liability. If you're able to strategically place your Banshees around, certainly just turning them into like walking torpedoes by getting multiple force multipliers here and then just running them into the enemy lines and just causing absolute havoc, certainly a viable strategy. If you're going to do that, you can give them abilities for shrieking, which is what it's called when they blow up. So like this one on the Siren's Call, you can sacrifice it themselves just to kind of kill the unit instead of having them die. This would cause fear, so then that for 1 turn that they can't do anything. If you stacked multiple, then it would add additional turns to the fear to allow you to get some kills, which could be quite good. The Chilling Call, what this does is when they die, it effectively creates an ice hazard, which was a major pain in the ass when you'd play against them, but less useful when you end up sacrificing yourself. This would just give them some armor destruction. This would give silence in our range. So this is kind of a debuffer, messing things up. If you're charging, then this would dispel any buffs that are on the unit that's attacking. Alternatively, they also have Curse Eater, and I didn't know how this worked early on, but this could be very helpful. But then again, to use this, you'd have to have the Banshees near your units in a defensive posture, and if they get sniped, then they're going to be blowing up your own guys, which is a major pain in the ass. But what you effectively could do is if you stack these up, you get Dispel. So you can end up just using them to take debuffs off of there, and then each dispelled effect gets +1 damage to Siren's Call, which is what happens when they die. Now again, if you're sitting there using them in this defensive posture, they're stacking up all this damage, and then it gets blown up in your units. You can end up blowing up your whole army. So I don't like the Banshees. I couldn't use them effectively, but I think that's due to user error, and you could definitely get much better ways of doing this. And then their other thing that's useful for them, especially early on, is they can use curses, so they're effectively traps, and the big thing to them is that they have the armor rend ability. So early on you have trouble getting past the armor, and this will allow you to do that, which is fantastic. So that's how I'd recommend kitting these guys out. And then on the higher difficulty, again, you right-click your hero, and then you can use the Lady of the Ashes. And she is an alternative hero. She's more of a mage, but she's actually a damage dealer mage, so it makes her kind of fun. So giving her something like the Scythe here, to if you kill guys using Judgment, you get +2 to your damage, so she can stack up damage. I don't have a good Arcane Claw because I didn't realize I had her, so I just never selected them. But effectively what this is a ranged damage. It can do a lot of damage, bypass armor, it can blow up any wisps that are around, and then her big thing is she does damage to units around her. So you can increase the burning aura, which if the enemies are moving in to attack you, then you do additional damage, and it ignores armor, and this will add additional turns to it. Alternatively, you can add more targets, so I think it starts as 1, and then you can get 2, and you can keep stacking those, so all the units around you can end up taking damage too. Giving her something like armor is always helpful, or the weapon mastery to increase her damage. Unfortunately, she is not a tank. If you wanted to get the turns to last longer, you could do this one. So you can't use the +2 armor, you can only use the guards. So again, stacking up a bunch of guards would keep her survivability up. So, you know, the moral of the story is you can never have too many guards. So doing stuff like that is how I'd kit her out. So multiple guards, multiple one of these searing flames, or just increasing her health. Alternatively, if you get her into a situation where you're worried she's going to die, you can end up using Ethereal. And ideally I would have used this. This probably would have been a very smart thing to do on my playthrough. Because what's very difficult using these mages as heroes instead of the tanks is the tanks obviously can tank and the mages can't, and so the AI, especially early on, likes to snipe down your units. So doing something like this would be very beneficial. So what I don't know with the Ethereal is, does she still trigger people to catch fire when she's Ethereal or not? Because if she was, you would just run into the middle of the enemy units, use all your buffed up Flames ability, cast Ethereal, and just weaken the whole enemy forces, and then your units are able to just snipe them out. So that's how I would play with the Lady of Ashes. Oh, I guess the one thing I didn't talk about is you have these miracles, which are pretty much one turn, you get one use abilities. I tend to not use them very often because I'd rather summon additional units, but there were a few occasions, especially with the healing is where I found them to be most helpful. Like healing your unit to full health ability, I forget what that one's called, but that's great for your heroes, especially on the boss battles. Finally, there's the Megakin of Nurgle.
Nurgle is the...
So I will kit these guys out real quick and give you some examples of how to play them. Okay, so on your main campaign, Ikarin Kinkerscorn is your hero. This is a ranged unit. This is the first campaign where your mage is actually, your hero is actually a mage and not a tank, so definitely makes the campaign much harder. And I actually had to switch it over to the tank on the normal and hard difficulty to be able to beat it, and then it was very easy. But what I typically recommend is getting some sort of damage staff that gives you armor as well, because the big thing with him is he'll get sniped down, he's very squishy, and he's easy to kill. So something you got to be careful of. I really like these these life things. Because what this does is effectively shreds armor, and it's permanent, and there's no way to take it back. So this was an absolute nightmare when I'd be running around with my tanks, but it's very helpful for you as you're playing around trying to take out the Stormcast and everybody else that's got more armor. So I found this to be a very useful ability. Alternatively, later in the game, you'll end up finding additional abilities. I never really used any of these other ones. I didn't use the Burning Head because when I was using the cheat engine to speed up the gameplay, occasionally the whirlwinds, cyclones, and the Burning Heads, these endless spells, would occasionally crash my game. So I didn't use it during the playthrough, but this would be possibly a great option to just run around, cause a bunch of dangerous fire on the map, and maybe soak up some attacks. And later on, you'll end up getting access to these feculent gnarl maws, and what these are effectively summoning points. And some of them, like this one, have auras that will improve your units. So like this one gives you armor and movement. So after 2 turns it matures, it becomes a summon point. You can summon multiple, and it definitely will boost up your units. I never used these realm shards. I just didn't find them very helpful. There's probably better ones out there that I didn't see, and there's also barriers that you can cast on yourself to increase survivability, so those are some options. In terms of the skills, this is what I was referencing with some of the other ones, is I just like to stack up guard abilities, so that way I get my armor up so he doesn't get killed. You have access to the Gift of Calcification, which effectively trades health for armor. And so if you get him standing on Corruption where he's healing 1 every turn, you can end up just doing this and stacking up armor to increase your survivability long enough, increase it as well, as long as you're surviving long enough for that to be the case. Nurglings. Very fun unit. Unfortunately, again, these guys also, for whatever reason, seem to crash my campaign when I was playing with it. So for these guys, they have access to these teeth, so you'll find different versions. This one, as you can see, increases their damage. They also have access to these Seeds of Corruptions, which is one of their abilities. That's how these guys are supposed to be used, is they can spread corruption. Normally these seeds get rid of their health, and then after you put 2, it turns into a blessing, and then they'll get health back. Alternatively, if you get something like this, then effectively they can spread their seeds without causing any damage to themselves. These guys are also fodder, so you run them around, and these guys are also trap makers, so you can throw these traps down. These ones rend armor. Alternatively, they have access to these rooting traps, which could be very good as well. Typically what I recommend is giving them something like the trap range and then 2 force multipliers, so you could potentially summon up to 5 of them. Again, I didn't really use them on my playthroughs, which is unfortunate because it would crash my game. So one of my favorite units for the Nurgle is the Puscoil Blight Lord. These are effectively cavalry high speed units. They do a good amount of damage. They've got a decent amount of health. You give them weapons so they can do quite a bit of damage. The nice thing about them is not only do they have a melee, but they also have a ranged attack. So they have this vomit ability, and if you get the higher tier ones, they'll give debuffs, and it does a pretty decent amount of damage. So you can do that when you're keeping them back, trying to get them healed or weakened down forces. I tend to like to give them blitz, so if there's soft, squishy mages around that I can snipe down, or archers, take them down. I like this ability. I wish I had more of them. This warped hammer blow, which will increase the vomit damage. Relentless, which allows me to summon and then move them right away. And then hit and run again, being able to attack and not get damage on the first assault too. That way I could keep their survivability up. Next unit is the Putrid Blight King. These are kind of fun units. They're very, very slow, which is kind of their main downside. There's 2 ways to build them. First way is you turn them into a tank, and the second option is you turn them into a damage dealer. So give them some sort of shield. I don't have a great shield because I didn't use them this way for much of it, but give them something like this. Boosts their armor up. And then their other claim to fame is using these special abdominal deformities or blessings, which allows you to grab units and pull them in towards you. So that's how you can help get around having such a low movement speed, or this one, as you can see, has a movement buff. In terms of the skills, I like to give them the improved guard, the force multiplier, and the summon cost reduction, so I could get them on the field faster. The alternative way of building them would be to give them one of these double-handed weapons, and then they could just become damage dealers, so then you give them something like this. So alright, the next two units are the Rotfly, and this is pretty much a low tier unit. It's good early on, but you'll rarely ever use it later in the game. You get them some teeth, good teeth, and they can actually do decent damage. But they effectively have the bite ability, so you attack and then you end up healing for the amount of damage that you do. And then they also have the vomit ability, so attacking them from range, so you pretty much can alternate, you know, vomit one turn, attack, and bite them the next turn. So you just go back and forth on there. I like to give them the force multiplier, a guard, or another force multiplier, and then once you get the warped hammer blow, increasing the vomit damage would be how I'd recommend using these guys. Once you get the guys that are riding on the bloodflies, though, there's really no reason to use these because they're just better all around. And then the last unit is the Rotbringer Sorcerer. These guys are also fun. These are effectively weaker versions of your hero. So kind of how you build it out depends on how you're going to use them. If you're using the mage, you probably want to build them out something like this, where you have the elite assistant, so you can summon additional ones, and then you just have all these summon cost reductions, so you can get them on the field. So the AI has other things to attack other than your unit. Again, they pretty much are the same equipment otherwise, so we already talked about using these Tomes of Life, or Gnarls, or the Flame Heads, Death Head, whatever it's called, and then the Staff. The alternate hero
Nurgle has ever come
is actually very disappointing, and the other hero is this guy right here. And you may be asking, why is it disappointing? It's disappointing because you can't change his weapon. It's bugged, and the developers never fixed this issue. So you effectively can't change his equipment in terms of his weapon, which is unfortunate because you could use him just like your other guys. You could either turn him into a major damage dealer, or if you gave him a one-handed weapon, he's supposed to have access to a shield, and that could have been a lot of fun just to kind of play around with. You know, he's got some very interesting character models and stuff, but I just don't understand why they didn't realize that his weapon was bugged, because it's not a particularly difficult thing to see. But, you know, I like to give him something like this, so he's got the movement. Joyous Bile Surge, I'd like to give him that ability, because it decreases it, and what that effectively is a heal. And then I give him the improved guard. The big thing with Nurgle is you get all these Nurgle blessings, but I never got the freaking things to work appropriately, so I don't know if it's bugged or I'm just not understanding how you're consuming the corruption appropriately. But I thought you'd get all these bonuses for being on there, but I just never got it to work appropriately. You know, you can do other benefits to the bile spreader, so like this one will give areas of corruption around you. I like to give them, you know, a little more armor, since normally I'd be doing a one-handed weapon, but due to the effect I can't change it because it's bugged. Alternatively, this would be an excellent one where you can charge and apply disease, so that would be quite beneficial because this guy will get a lot of kills when you're attacking the enemy units. I'm trying to remember, I thought there were some other benefits that his bile thing had. So Bile Strike, so it gives you a knockback. Yeah, so it is just enemies. I wasn't quite sure how that worked because it's a heal, so I wouldn't want to necessarily knock back my own units. And then giving them something like the Gift Calcification The other thing is, I didn't really talk about this for any of the heroes, but each of the heroes has the ability to summon a heroic, I don't know what to say, buff. And depending on how many you get, it gives you significant benefits. So for these guys, you can summon a Great Unclean One. For the Undead, he summons, I think, a Demon Horse or Demon Dragon. And then the Stormcaller, she summons Cobalt or Dragon. I found them to just kind of be unnecessary. There's a couple of maps where it would potentially be helpful, but with the delayed turns, taking 3 turns where you're not able to do anything, it just takes too long to summon them for me to really put a lot of thought into it. The other option would be to give the +2 health for a skill, and then that would increase his survivability even further. So that's how I would recommend kitting units out, and that's what I have to say about this game in terms of tips and tricks. So hopefully that's helpful. I was reading online that a lot of players have a lot of difficulty with this game, and I will say there's definitely goes from being very easy to very hard. It's kind of a unusual design. It's not bad, but it effectively expects you to die, and not many games are built at a level where it expects you to just keep dying over and over and over again until you've leveled up your guys and gotten better equipment, where then you can start to really get through. So it was kind of a bizarre situation there, but it actually, for the amount of money that the game costs, I think it's money well spent. It was kind of fun. Like, once you get towards the end of the game and you've gone through the campaigns with each of the 3 factions, you get pretty burned out on it. I think if I wasn't using the cheat engine, I would be more frustrated and less complimentary to the game, because the battle animations are very low, and after I got used to using the 2 to 3 times speed up for the movement, for the times where the battles where it would crash the game, it just was painfully slow to have to go back and not be able to use that. So that's what I'd have for recommendations for you. Next time we'll go through the lore books, since I do have the lore books for almost all of the characters by going through and leveling up these other guys with their playthrough. So thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please give my channel a like and subscribe to encourage me to post more content for you. Have a great day.